Hi, I'm Bryan Rutberg from 3C Communications. We're back for another month of the Founders Live Influencer Series, and we always talk about public speaking and message development. Today, we're going to talk about how to stand, walk, and talk when you are on the stage. I'm coming to you today from Seattle's World Trade Center. It's right downtown on Alaska Way. It's a great place where Seattle's business leaders can get together and connect with one another, find ways to collaborate, and support the globalization of the Seattle life. The title for this month's learning in the Founders Live Influencer Series is Let's Get Physical. So with possible apologies to Olivia Newton-John, let's talk about how to be physical and take command of the front of the room or a stage when you get the chance to present. Let's start by talking about how you take the stage and what your natural standing position is. I like to stand straight, of course. The chin is up, the chest is out, the nose is sort of slightly pointed that way so you can look into your crowd. Your feet are about shoulder width apart. And I like to start with my hands right about here with those open palms demonstrating to the audience you're there for them, you're open to them, and it means that you can't do this, or this, or this, or any of those other things that you do when you don't know what to do with your hands. The way I figure it is if your hands are here, you look open to the audience, but it's also not easy to hold this position for very long, so it leads to some natural movement in order to emphasize the points that you're making. It's easy to talk about if something is big or a long process, or to show that something's small, or to mime, or to point at the audience, or to raise your hand if you're trying to get the audience to do a show of hands. If you start here, you're conscious of it when you go down, and you really are forced to do a little bit of moving and gesticulating, which is one way to keep the audience focused on you. When I'm presenting to a room full, whether I'm in front of the room or I'm up on a stage, I like to walk a little bit. It gives me the chance to keep things a little bit visually interesting. It allows me to use a physical transition as I'm going through a verbal transition. And of course, if I move front of stage and back of stage and left and right, it means that I'm giving the whole audience a chance to connect with me, and it means I can direct my gaze to different parts of the audience from different parts of the stage. I find it super for transition. So let's talk about how to walk. First of all, it's not just because you've got ants in your pants. You just don't want to be moving around somewhat aimlessly because you've got nervous energy. What you really want is to stand stock still in a spot, use your hands, all of that physical movement without actually moving your feet, make your point, and then as you're transitioning to a new point, you can find yourself moving around, just getting connected to a different part of the audience. And then when it's time to move on to another part of your subject, you can do the same. It doesn't have to be purposeful, but it can't be without purpose at all. That is to say, the movement doesn't need to mimic anything, or it doesn't need to suggest any movement in your story. It just needs to give the audience a chance to catch up to you while you either talk your way through some transitional point or, all right, I think I've made my point. Let's move on. You can let a thought sink in for your audience. So, natural stride, keeping your chest and your face pointed toward the audience, and get to a spot, stop, and then continue with your point. Now that you know how to stand on stage and how to walk the stage, let's talk about what you do with your voice. Whether you're in a room of 10 or 12, or a classroom with 30 or 40, or an entire auditorium, what you need to do, of course, is make sure everyone can hear you. They talk about having your voice come from your chest instead of your throat or your mouth. I know that's a little hard to imagine, but you pretty much know it when you do it, and it's something that a good presentation coach can work with you on in order to make sure you're always heard at the back of the room. You know, I've worked with clients before where we've set members of their staff around a large auditorium before the speech, during rehearsal, to make sure not only that the speaker can be heard all the way in the back, but to practice making eye contact at different points around the room. So let's talk about talking first. When you're talking, of course, you need to hit sort of a natural spot in your voice where you're projecting, but it doesn't sound like you're shouting. Because when you're shouting, you want people to know it. And raising your voice is a great way to make sure the audience is paying attention to you. Because we're animals, right? We're trained to listen for diversity. We can listen for the voice going up. We can listen more when your voice goes down and you're talking sort of conspiratorially with the audience, maybe sharing a little something that you want them to be impressed by. The other verbal thing I love to do, what I love to do is repeat something. Because when you repeat it, they know it's important, or they catch it the second time if they missed it the first. So let me say that again. When you repeat, people catch it, whether it's knowing it's important by hearing it twice or following that nice little pause, they catch it the second time. And the last thing worth mentioning is the value of and the power of that pause. Because we're animals, because we're trained to listen for variance, if you hear someone's voice go up or go down, you're going to pay attention. You hear that repetition, you're going to pay attention, but nothing freaks people out like silence. Next time you have a major point to make in a presentation you're giving, try being quiet for a couple of beats and look how quickly every eye in the room looks up to you. The last physical part of taking the stage and having the audience pay attention to you that I want to talk about is eye contact. When you're in a small room, it's easy to catch everybody's eye through the course of a presentation and to move around a little bit and hold them for a phrase or two before you move on to someone else. When I'm in a big room, it's the same thing, except you've got a lot more territory to cover. I like to break a room up into 9 sections. You've got your front, you've got your middle, you've got your back of the room, and then of course you've got your left, your middle, your right, and your middle. I try and make sure that I'm checking in with each of those sort of checkerboard spots through the course of a presentation. It's not an overt going around like a clockwise or a counterclockwise. It's really more of just being mindful if there's some part of the audience that you've left out during the course of your presentation. I like to focus on 1 or 2 people and try and hone in on them. Usually I look for a colorful shirt or a hat or something like that, or someone who's smiling at me, giving me good feedback. And I guarantee you, if you're in a big room and you're talking to one person in the back right of the room, 10 or 20 people right around that person think you're making eye contact with them too. Eye contact, again, we're animals. As humans, we really respond when we know someone has their eye on us. And it's a great way to find that one person over there in row Z, seat 13, who's looking at his or her phone and kind of staring in that direction for a little while until people feel your eyes on them and come right back to you to pay attention. Because it's all about making sure that you're connecting with your audience, and eye contact is a great way for people to know that you're paying attention to them. Thanks. We'll see you over on the live chat in just a minute, or if you're watching this on replay, go ahead and give us a buzz at 3ccomms.com, or I'm Bryan at 3ccomms.com. Thanks.